The observation dome on Research Vessel Telnar 6 was silent, except for the faint hum of translation nodes embedded in the walls. 4 alien researchers stood in a semicircle, their translucent eye fins twitching in quiet anticipation. On the other side of the glass, in the gravity-modulated containment chamber, sat a man tying the laces of his left boot with slow, deliberate movements. "Is that the one?" asked Velnix, its bioluminescent skin pulsing a soft green. "Yes," replied Hearn, the lead xenopsychologist. He calls himself Finric Olander. Age 34. Occupation, Field Logistics Coordinator for something called a Polar Survey Team. "Why is he here?" asked Laren, who had never observed a human before. "Because," Hearn said, tilting his head to the side, "he walked 7 kilometers on a torn ankle ligament in sub-zero temperatures and only asked for assistance after reaching the base camp." "He walked," Laren blinked twice. "On a torn ligament?" "Yes," Hearn replied. "And his vitals stayed within survival margins the entire time. We assumed their pain perception was limited, possibly suppressed through some evolutionary quirk." Velnix tapped a control panel. A hologram bloomed, displaying Finric's internal scan from the field report. "Sprain confirmed. Severe. No pharmacological dampeners found in his bloodstream, no artificial implants, no visible signs of distress." "Then how did he keep moving?" Laren asked. "That's what we're here to find out," Hearn said. Inside the chamber, Finric stood up slowly. His left leg was braced and he leaned slightly to the right. The bruising around his ankle had started to fade, but the swelling was still visible. He took a careful step forward, testing his weight, then another. The observation chamber's door hissed open. "Mr. Olander," Hearn greeted. "You are cleared for your scheduled movement test. Are you ready?" Finric nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." "You're not going to ask me to jog in this thing, are you?" "No jogging," Velnix said. "Just walk from one side of the chamber to the other, slowly." Finric raised an eyebrow. "That's it, for now," Hearn added. "We're monitoring muscular strain and neural response." Finric exhaled and began walking. His left foot dragged slightly at first, but he adjusted within 3 steps. By the time he reached the far side, his limp had smoothed into a rhythm. Hearn turned to the others. "His pain receptors are firing, the signal is intense, but look, he's adapting his gait to minimize torque on the joint." "Is that learned behavior or instinct?" Laren asked. "Unknown." Finric reached the wall, turned, and came back. He paused halfway, letting out a sharp breath. "You all right?" Hearn asked through the intercom. "Yeah," Finric said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Just stings a bit, nothing I haven't dealt with before." "What does it feel like?" Velnix asked. "Ever twist a towel and then jam a nail through it while someone yells at you to keep walking?" Finric replied. "No, well, it's kinda like that." The aliens exchanged glances. 2 hours later, Finric was back in the medical lab, foot elevated, a cooling sheath wrapped around his ankle. Velnix hovered nearby, taking readings. "Why didn't you stop when the injury happened?" it asked. "Because I was alone," Finric said. "Storm was coming in, radio was down. If I stayed there, I'd have frozen before anyone found me." "But the pain means something's wrong," Finric said, shrugging. "Doesn't mean you stop, just means you pay attention." "Your species evolved with this approach?" Laren asked from across the room. "Not sure it's evolution," Finric replied. "More like necessity, you do what you have to." Later that day, Finric was escorted to a multi-terrain simulator. The room changed as he moved gravel, ice, uneven metal, angled slopes. Every few steps, his ankle flared with pain, but he kept going. The researchers took note silently. His vitals spiked with each misstep, but he didn't cry out. His breathing was labored, sweat soaked through his shirt. After 27 minutes, he finally collapsed onto one of the padded benches. "Why continue?" Hearn asked him again during the debrief. "I had to prove I could still do it," Finric said. "It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt, it's about knowing it does and doing it anyway." The next day, the aliens ran a comparative test. They introduced a synthetic analog of the human pain response. into one of their own volunteers, Zern, a biomechanical engineer. Zern was tasked with walking the same terrain simulator while experiencing a pain signal calibrated to match Finric's. Zern made it 8 minutes before crumpling. "Disengage stimulus," Velnix shouted. Zern lay twitching on the ground, shivering despite the ambient warmth. He couldn't regulate his perception, Hearn noted. "Why not?" Laren asked. "He lacked the psychological buffer," Velnix said. "The human's endurance isn't just physical, it's cognitive. There's an element of compartmentalization. That," Finric said from the doorway, limping slightly, "is what we call grit." Weeks passed. Finric's ankle improved slowly. The swelling subsided by week 3. Physical therapy sessions began with guided range of motion exercises, followed by balance drills. By week 5, he could walk without the brace, though not without a limp. By week 7, he was jogging in place. The aliens remained baffled. "You strained the ligaments," Velnix said during one session. "In our species, even mild damage to weight-bearing tissue results in full immobilization. Our bodies do not tolerate instability." "Sounds nice," Finric said through gritted teeth as he leaned into a stretch. "But humans don't have that luxury." "Then why risk further damage? Because sometimes," he said, holding the stretch, "the alternative is worse." In the 8th week, Finric was invited to speak at the Interstellar Physiological Conference held on orbital station Naren 4. The crowd was a mix of species, some aquatic, some crystalline, some silicon-based, but every one of them leaned forward when Finric limped onto the stage and stood at the podium. He didn't speak from notes. "I'm not here because I'm exceptional," he began. "I'm here because I got hurt and I didn't stop moving. You want to know why? It's not because I didn't feel the pain, it's because I did." There was silence. "You've looked at our biology, our nerves, our muscles, but you're missing the thing that keeps us going. It's not just what we're made of. It's what we believe. Pain doesn't stop us. It reminds us we're still alive." When he walked off stage, the applause wasn't loud, but it was sustained, and back aboard Telnar 6, the researchers updated their hypothesis. Human pain threshold, not limited, adaptive, contextual. Behaviorally overridden when survival or duty compels. Hearn added one more line beneath that. Subject Finric Olander, case study in functional resilience under prolonged nociceptive strain. Then he paused, tapping his finger on the screen thoughtfully. "Addendum," he said. Subject walked on a severe sprain in lethal conditions under his own power. No pharmacological aid. Recovery time, 8 weeks. Conclusion, pain perception present. Response. Extraordinary. Finric stood in the centrifuge corridor, arm extended, gripping the mag handrail as the artificial gravity ramped up another 0.2 g to Kes. His left leg trembled slightly, a subtle reminder that soft tissue didn't care much for artificial timelines. The medical clearance had come that morning, light duty only, no dynamic load bearing, and yet here he was, prepping for a rotational tolerance test that hadn't even been approved yet. "You're not scheduled for this module," said a voice behind him, clipped and metallic. He turned, still clutching the rail. A tall, beetle-shelled Cernari technician loomed in the entrance, optical apertures narrowing incrementally. Finric gave a short nod. "Just calibrating my balance," he said. "Still feel a bit lopsided. You are not authorized to initiate spin cycle." "I didn't," Finric said. "Just holding on while it runs helps me recalibrate. You should be in hydrotherapy. The prescribed recovery arc doesn't account for vestibular lag," he interrupted. "You guys have inertial dampeners. We don't. If I don't train my inner ear to recognize rotational drift, I'm gonna hurl next time we drop into a gravity well." The Cernari technician hesitated, then stepped back. "Do not alter settings. If you fall, I will not be responsible." "Fair." The corridor vibrated as the rotation reached operational velocity. Finric adjusted his grip, shifted his weight onto his left foot, and closed his eyes. His back foot skated slightly, but he corrected, breathing through his nose. 30 seconds passed, then 40. At the minute mark he let go, his foot drifted forward a half step before he caught himself. No fall, no stumble, just a brief tilt, then stability. He opened his eyes and exhaled. Still got it, he muttered. Back in the rehab ward, a new face awaited him, tall, angular, with 6 arms and no discernible pupils. The name tag read Dr. Arvith, and the moment Finric stepped through the threshold, she activated a multispectral scan. "You're non-compliant," she said without preamble. "Morning to you too. You left hydrotherapy 14 minutes early, twice this week. You've also overridden the bedrest timer, and the biomonitor reports 0 use of analgesics in 3 days. I'm tapering. You were never prescribed tapering. You were prescribed staged withdrawal. I know how my body feels. You're not qualified to determine. I've been through worse, and I know when I'm past the threshold where drugs help more than they hurt." Arvith didn't blink, possibly couldn't. She tapped on her tablet with 2 fingers, the rhythm sharp. "You've also been accessing muscle reprogramming protocols outside the approved sequence. Because your sequence is built for beings with distributed load-bearing appendages. I have 2 legs. Not 6. You've rewritten the gate alignment code. I didn't rewrite it. I adjusted the bias parameters so the neural feedback doesn't overcorrect my stride." She stared at him. "You're not a rehabilitation specialist. I'm a logistics officer. We figure out how to get from point A to point B when the map's on fire and the compass is broken." That afternoon, she submitted a report titled, "Subject demonstrates high-functioning neuroadaptivity and unauthorized procedural modification. Recommend observation under controlled stress conditions." 2 days later, Finric was summoned to a kinetic simulation chamber. It was larger than the one used for terrain trials, domed, with a segmented floor capable of dynamic reshaping. The walls shimmered with latent projection arrays. He stood in the center as the lights dimmed. "What am I walking into?" he asked. Hearn's voice came through the intercom. "A variable threat assessment. You'll be asked to navigate unstable terrain while responding to environmental hazards. No actual danger. Just simulation. Copy that." The floor shifted under his feet, gravel to sand to slick polymer in rapid succession. He adjusted, knees bent, footfall light. A crosswind kicked in from the left, followed by a sudden incline. His knee twinged, but he pressed through. Then came the projections. Shapes flickered into view, falling debris, simulated flames, bursts of static meant to mimic electrical interference. He sidestepped a falling girder, ducked under a swinging pipe, then rolled behind a faux barrier as a blast of compressed air knocked over a stack of crates. "You're increasing the load too fast," he called out. "Stress response under duress is part of the evaluation," Hearn replied. The incline steepened into a slope. His left foot slipped and he landed hard on one knee. Pain spiked, sharp and immediate. He gritted his teeth, pushed himself upright and kept moving. A timer appeared above the exit arch. 45 seconds remaining. He jogged, favoring his right leg but not limping. The chamber threw one more surprise, a simulated explosion that cracked the floor beneath him. The panel dropped 2 inches, not deep but enough to jolt his ankle. He stumbled, caught the handrail, and dragged himself across the finish line with 3 seconds to spare. The floor reset. The lights came back up. "Test complete," Hearn said. "Next time, just drop a piano on me," Finric muttered. In the observation booth, Arvith leaned forward. "He should have fallen at the 30-second mark," she said. "He adapted," Hearn replied. "The joint instability was measurable," she said. "He compensated in real time, without recalibration." They watched as Finric limped out of the chamber, sweat pouring down his back but head high. Later that week, the Interspecies Council held a closed symposium on biological resilience. Finric had no speaking role this time. He was listed as observational consultant. Still, the room was full. Delegates from 22 species attended. A tall, spiral-limbed delegate from the IHES collective asked, "What is the primary evolutionary incentive for enduring harmful stimuli over prolonged periods?" Finric leaned forward. Sometimes survival costs pain. If you flinch, you die, so you stop flinching. Do you consider this rational? No, but it works. A crystalline envoy from the Zelaria Cord whirred softly, "Your species lacks regenerative capabilities." Why not avoid injury entirely? Because we can't predict everything, so we plan to survive it instead. One of the aquatic delegates asked, "Is this behavior cultural or biological?" Finric didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Cultural behavior can shape biology. But sometimes it's just stubbornness." The room fell silent. After the symposium, as Finric stepped into the corridor, Arvith caught up to him. "You're scheduled for reconstructive therapy tomorrow. Already packed my gym shoes. You know we can repair the ligament with nano-threading." "You don't have to finish the rehab." "I do," he said, "even if it takes longer, especially then." Arvith tilted her head. "You'd rather rebuild from scratch than accept a shortcut?" "No one learns from shortcuts." She paused. "You realize that what you're doing is not statistically optimal." "Never aimed for optimal," he said. "Just durable." That evening, Hearn closed the latest case log. He didn't add a summary. He simply marked the entry complete and opened a new file. Title: Secondary Adaptation Observed in Subject Olander, Volitional Pain Integration and Functional Persistence. He hesitated, then added a subheading. Note: Subject now voluntarily selects highest difficulty settings in all simulations. No external prompt required. By the 10th week, Finric could sprint again, not fast, not pretty, but without compensating for his left side. The limp was gone. In its place was a stiff efficiency, the kind born from repetition, not recovery. The medical AI had flagged his profile for aberrant rehabilitation trajectory, but no one intervened. At 1300 ship time, he arrived in the auxiliary hangar, where temporary gravity was cycling through lunar standard for a diplomatic cargo drill. He wasn't on the roster. He stood near the loading platform, watching two Calyxians fumble with a container marked "Volatile, do not invert." "You're going to want to rotate that 90 degrees clockwise," he said, stepping forward. One of them hissed, startled. "You are not authorized to be here." "You're about to rupture a magnetic seal," he replied. "See that symbol right there? That's not a warning. It's a structural orientation mark. Flip it the wrong way and the internal stasis field destabilizes." The Calyxians exchanged glances. "I used to pack those into crawler bays during solar flare season," he added. "You get exactly one mistake." They realigned the crate without comment. At 14:30, he was back in the neurofeedback chamber. The therapist, a soft-spined Avoral named Sen, was recalibrating the mirror neuron interface. Finric sat in the chair, helmet secured, eyes closed. "You've exceeded the neural fatigue threshold 3 sessions in a row," Sen said. "We need to throttle back." "Not until I can sync both hemispheres under variable load. You're already at 89% parity." "That's higher than most baseline humans achieve under sedation." "But I'm not under sedation." "No, you're not," the session began. His fingers twitched in sequence, each movement mirrored by projected avatars. The interface pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Sen adjusted the stimulus tempo. Finric matched it. The left-right coordination finally closed the gap at minute 8. The display glowed green. "That's full alignment," Sen said. "You've reached symmetrical neural patterning." "Good," Finric said. "Let's try it under stress." "We have no protocol for stress induction during neural mapping." "Then improvise." Sen hesitated. "I can simulate threat proximity using auditory overlays." "Do it." The chamber filled with distant growling, echoing alarms, and the shriek of tearing metal. Finric's pulse jumped. His hands began to drift out of sync. He bit down, focused, and stabilized the motion. At minute 12, the system beeped, full parity maintained. After the session, he didn't rest. He rerouted to the fabrication bay. By 1700, he was assembling a knee stabilizer out of repurposed drone struts and a section of decommissioned exosuit mesh. The technician on duty, a feathered Marnak, watched in silence. "That's not regulation support gear," it said. Nope, Finric replied. Regulation doesn't account for lateral shear under angled descent wearing mag boots. You're expecting angled descent, always. At 1900, he was summoned to the Central Forum, not by name by designation, Human Subject 8A. The message contained only coordinates and a timestamp. He arrived to find a compact audience, 5 researchers, 2 diplomats, and 1 unfamiliar figure, a tall, smooth-skinned entity with no eyes and a voice like compressed air. "I am Velith," it said. "Cognitive analyst. I've reviewed your trajectory." Finric crossed his arms. "You want something? I want to know why you persist. You've already read the logs, you know the injury, you know the timeline. I know the data, I want the reason," Finric exhaled. "Because if I don't fix myself, someone else has to. And that someone might not know what failure costs. You assume failure is inevitable." "No, I assume it's expensive," Velith's head tilted. "Your species is inefficient, high biological maintenance, poor redundancy. Yet you operate under conditions that would incapacitate nearly every other known life form." "Sounds about right." "Why?" "Because we don't stop just because it hurts. We stop when we're finished." Velith paused. "You understand that pain is a deterrent, not a challenge. Then you don't understand humans." Velith leaned forward. "And what precisely makes your kind willing to redefine suffering as progress? Because otherwise it means nothing. Pain without purpose is just noise." Velith stepped back. "You've answered sufficiently." The room dispersed. 3 days later, Finric was cleared for full planetary excursion. The test: a high-gravity survey run on Verk 3, a mining station with gravitational flux zones and unstable terrain. No safety net, no medical drone, just him and a local guide. They landed at dawn. By mid-morning, the terrain had shifted twice. The gravity fluctuated between 1.4 and 2 g/s. Finric's stabilizer held. "Your species is not designed for this," said the guide, a squat, rubbery creature named Sor. "You're not wrong," Finric said, hauling a sensor array up a slope. "But we adapt. Most who try this strain their vertebral column. Mine's already been strained. This just feels like Monday." By noon, the seismic tremors began. Sor stumbled during the 4th one. Finric grabbed its arm and pulled it upright. "You fall here, you stay down," he said. By 1400, they'd reached the relay beacon. The transmission uplink had buckled under crust pressure. Finric unsealed the housing, rerouted the signal through his portable emitter, and ducked as another tremor struck. "You are bleeding," Sor said. Finric glanced at his palm. "Superficial, you are leaking, still functional." They returned to the landing zone by dusk. The evac shuttle arrived late. Finric didn't sit during the wait. The next morning, the Interspecies Council added a new entry under human field response protocols. Pain acknowledgement does not equate to performance degradation. In humans, distress is often paired with increased cognitive focus and adaptive behavior. That evening, Velith appeared unannounced in the hangar, where Finric was reassembling his stabilizer. "You succeeded," it said. "I returned," Finric replied. "You endured high-gravity stress, seismic instability, and structural failure. No sedation, no augmentation." "I had duct tape and spite." "There is no metric for spite. You're welcome to invent one." Velith stared at him. "Why not rest now?" "Because I'm not done." Velith hesitated. "There is no further test scheduled. I'm not testing anything anymore." "Then what are you doing?" "Fixing the next thing before it breaks." Velith turned to leave. "I believe I understand your kind better now." Finric didn't look up. "That's dangerous." "Why?" "Because once you understand us, you stop expecting the obvious, and that's when we really surprise you." 2 weeks later, the Council voted to initiate a joint resilience initiative modeled after human recovery protocols. The program was titled Operational Continuity Under Stress. Finric was offered a formal advisory role. He declined. Instead, he submitted a single-page memo. "Pain is not the enemy, it's the invoice. Pay it and you move forward." He signed it. Then he went back to work.